So I have a talk, but I also want to hear what you guys are interested in. So just like show of hands, who here there's some chance you'll actually like build a food forest, like you have property, you might build a pollinator garden. Okay, good. So we're on topic. Um, who who knows what a food forest is? I know I talked to some of you already. Raise your hand, anyone?
I'm getting an idea of
Yeah, you're getting an idea of it. Okay.
You were very informative before.
Yeah. So you'll have a really clear idea of what a food forest is. I kind of gave you all who I talked to like the quick spiel of what it is. I'll break it down more. Who here is interested in like a pollinator garden and they know what that is? Who's like very familiar with that? Okay.
I mean, I kind of have one, but it's,
Mhm.
I don't know. It's not a real one. It's just things I've heard are good for pollinators.
Okay. Sounds
It's
pretty
a
cool.
fake one.
Yeah, it's fake. So yeah, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the why and like how I got into this and what I'm interested in, and then we're gonna get into the what and exactly how to do it. We're gonna talk about like A to Z, how to build a food forest. I'm gonna kind of just cover everything. It's not gonna be super in depth. I'm not gonna like tell you every little detail, but I kind of want to lay out the whole broad framework so people understand the process and you understand the information and you know the broad frameworks and the principles. And that's really what I'm interested in is basically the same principles that go into a food forest are the same principles that go into a pollinator garden. And it's the systems thinking, it's mimicking nature, it's systems that work synergistically where everything is functioning together. And so yeah, just to give you a little bit about how I got into this, I was just telling these people I wouldn't talk about this here. I got into this because I started to get into healthy food, and I realized that organic food is pretty meaningless, and the standards have gone down and down since they were created 30 years ago. Even organic agriculture is destroying the earth. It's oftentimes very monoculture. We're just not using certain chemicals, and just vast swaths of land have been replaced from natural ecosystems to agriculture. And if you look at like the cornfields in the United States, the corn industry is just massively subsidized. We give like 80-90% of our agricultural subsidies towards industrial agriculture, and the rest go to more and more regenerative, but still it's completely disproportionate. It makes no sense that we give this many subsidies to corn, which basically just makes it so the amount of corn that is produced is higher than the market would otherwise demand. So I don't think corn-based biofuel is very efficient. And a lot of that corn then just goes to factory farms. And so you have all of these cows, and what does a cow do in nature? These ruminant animals would be grazing around, having symbiotic relationships with the ecosystems, with prairie ecosystems that are adapted to mob grazing, where the cattle graze the plants down, leave a bunch of poop, and go somewhere else for at least 30 days for it to regenerate. So it's this whole integrated system where the cows are getting their food from the land, and instead we're growing the corn in one place, harvesting it with massive machinery, dumping chemicals that gets into the groundwater, shipping it over to another place, feeding it to the cows, and then taking the poop from that cows, and most of the time it's just sitting in massive piles where it's releasing methane, which leads to climate change. And people say cows are bad for the climate. It's a big difference when you have a giant pile of cow poop somewhere versus cow poop that's actually on the prairie, and then there's methanotrophic bacteria that sequester the methane back into the soil. And so the fundamental problem with a lot of these things, that kind of paints a picture of the difference between systems thinking and when you just start to break things down very reductionistically. So industrial agriculture is like, okay, there's a cow, let's feed it. Let's take the poop. Everything is just broken down and isolated. And in the name of efficiency, we say we're going to build these systems where everything is efficient. We look at metrics like one farmer with a certain tractor can go and produce a bunch of corn. And we label it as efficient because we're using this reductionistic model of a certain metric where a certain amount of labor, a certain amount of time leads to a certain amount of calorie output. But if you take a more systems thinking approach, what you're actually going to see is that we're not factoring in the cost to human health, the cost of animal cruelty, the cost to the environment, and just all the different costs where actually it's maybe more efficient to go in your backyard and pick an apple from an apple tree that's just growing there. So like when we're thinking about the argument that industrial agriculture is inefficient, obviously I think the solution for agriculture is something that's more systems thinking, that's more natural. But the big argument against that is that in industrialized societies, we're able to function, we're able to be so efficient, we're able to have more of a population because of how efficient industrial agriculture is, because of the advent of the Haber-Bosch process, where you can fix nitrogen from the atmosphere into a chemical and go apply it, because of chemical herbicides, because of other phosphorus-based chemical fertilizers. The argument is that it's so efficient, it's like, oh, that would be nice if we had less pollution in the waterways. It would be nice if we had more nutrient-dense food, because oranges today are 10 times less nutrient-dense than they were like 50 years ago. That would be nice, but it's just not efficient. And really my argument is, and what I'm trying to do by building food forests for people and empowering others to do that, is that we're not taking a systemic approach. And just the most simple example that kind of points out the absurdity of this thinking is the fact that food forests, yes, there's some upfront costs in establishing them, but once they're in place, they're lower maintenance than a grass lawn. Instead of having to hire someone or spend your time and energy mowing this grass lawn once a week maybe, you can have a food forest that you check in on for 30 minutes once a month. Obviously, the installation is more of a cost, but when we have a new housing development and we go install grass lawns, and we go install $10,000 worth of borders, a bunch of non-native ornamental plants, people are regularly putting money into installation costs for landscaping. So when you really start to think about it and you look at all these different factors, it becomes more clear that this argument that industrial agriculture is just efficient doesn't really make sense. And do we need more people to have relationships with their food? That's ultimately the question. Do we need more people to be working in farming? Because that is the one factor where with industrial agriculture, you can have one farmer that just produces a massive amount of calories. While people are complaining about all our jobs are going to go away, I think we're going to be able to have some people who want to have relationships with their food. But it's beginning to get it to a point with grocery prices that people actually can just individually save money growing their own food. If you get a food forest in your yard, you're going to save money on groceries, you're going to spend less money on lawn care over time, you're going to spend less money on medical bills down the road because the food you're getting from a food forest is at a whole nother level. I think personally, and this is not a numerical quantitative thing, but I think that the difference between industrial agricultural food and organic food is barely anything compared to the difference between organic certified food and actual high quality, naturally produced regenerative food. And what I mean by that is that the food is coming from a system that is functioning as close to a natural system as possible. And so when you look at a natural system, now we're going to start to get into how you actually build a food forest and what this looks like. And that's going to kind of give you a hint. And ultimately the answer is simply that when you have really alive soil, you have really alive systems, that's going to produce the healthiest food. When it's really fresh, fully vine ripened, that's a huge key point for that.